Welcome to Screen Chat, live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca. So,
we break down all things pop culture, from the hottest takes to the deepest cuts.
some things that are comic accurate shouldn't be on the TV.
From the latest Marvel blockbusters. I think we need an Amazing Spider-Man 3 before we get that, if that's the case.
Very true.
To DC's Darkest Nights, and like, how do you get Christopher Nolan to do superheroes and make something that good? And it was just number one.
And to galaxies far, far away. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin, all these characters who are mainstream, they have to not just take things at face value.
We got you covered. Plus, you never know who may join us. Alicia put up the one, yeah.
It's up.
Looks a bit.
To tell us that.
Yeah, he literally did
used
tell
to
us
say
that.
I'm at flight.
These guys are trolling.
This is Screen Chat.
Pop culture, real talk.
And everything in between.
Live from the Media Hub
On riotradio.ca.
Welcome to Screen Chat, live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca. I'm your host, Justin, and behind the scenes today, I have Eldon. Eldon, thank you again for being here to tech the show. Cannot do it without you. And today we have a very, like, for lack of better words, super episode. This is an episode that I was very nervous to do this episode, I'm not gonna lie. For the last couple months, this one it's been like daunting me. It's been jarring. The idea that Superman is coming back to theaters and we're going to get a James Gunn movie on it. And today, that's what we will be talking about. Because Legacy soars and Superman flies again, as James Gunn has officially released his adaptation of the Kryptonian. And there's a lot to talk about. Now, as you guys might hear the tone in my voice right now, I'm just nervous because this was a film that I was not okay with. I was not looking forward to it, and I was very nervous to see how James Gunn would bring one of my favorite characters to life in the modern day. And I think today is my chance to give you guys a review, opinions, takes as a fan, as a critic, with a lot of spoilers. So that's your spoiler warning. You have been warned. Thank you guys, though, for tuning in and supporting. You know, because clearly if you're tuning off the video, it's because you know. So thank you guys for tuning in. But if you haven't seen Superman by James Gunn, you got to cut. Sorry, you got to get out of the club. So that's your warning. Let's jump straight into it. Let's turn up the vibes and let's get right to it. So Superman, originally called Superman Legacy. What were my first thoughts? We're going to talk about my first reactions. How does it compare to past films and expectations? So let's get straight into it. Did it feel like a Superman movie? Well, this is the topic that everybody wanted to know the answer to going into the film. Was it going to be a Superman movie, a DC movie, maybe a James Gunn, just pure James Gunn movie? And then we'll use the W word. Was it going to be woke? What was this movie going to be? And that was my biggest fear. But to answer the question, did it feel like a Superman movie? Absolutely. This film felt like a comic book that I read as a kid, or one of the animated TV shows episodes that I watched as a child. It felt like that on the big screen. And how it compares to past Superman films, and I want to bring up some other actors here. Personally, Man of Steel is one of my favorite films in superhero genres of all time. And that's a movie that I've now lived with for 13 years. And David Cornsweet's adaptation has just come out. So I don't know if I could put it ahead of Man of Steel just yet, but it's definitively the second best Superman movie of all time, in my opinion. There's no doubt about that. I don't want to disrespect Christopher Reeve or Brandon Routh, or maybe I don't remember. Dean Cain, I believe. Dean Cain was making some headlines too before the film, but I don't want to disrespect nobody. But I'm gonna say that James Gunn's Superman for me is definitively at least number 2. It's definitely top 2 in my opinion. And the expectations. Well, I did not know what to think. When I saw Mr. David Cornsweet don the suit, fly in the trailer, and just look like this in the posters, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't think the movie was going to be good. I didn't think it was going to be watchable. Thought it was going to be a little goofy. But a part of me was holding on, and a part of me was kind of in my delusional land, Delulu land, whatever you want to call it. And I thought that maybe, just maybe, that symbol of hope was going to be on full display and this movie was going to be good. And back in January, we did an episode on pop culture predictions. So I think we'll pull up what I said about the film in January, and then from there, we will be discussing the rest of the film. So let's take a look and see. So my next one. Now, this one is a little controversial here, but the take goes that Superman Legacy will be the most surprising release of the year. And I think it's going to turn a lot of heads, and I think a lot of people are going to really like this. So yeah, that's what I had to say in January. That was our first episode of the new year, and I remember I said to Eldon that day, and I actually said this on the episode, so before anybody goes back, I said I don't believe that. I didn't think that was gonna fully happen, but did it turn a lot of heads? Did a lot of people like it? And that's what we're gonna talk about today. Whew, now that burden and weight is off my chest, let's get right into it. So let's just go for it. We're gonna talk about the casting and the performances to start. So let's start off with the man of the hour, David Cornsweet as Superman. Possibly the most controversial actor choice, I think, in recent times, because he obviously replaced the loved Henry Cavill for this role. Henry Cavill is one of the greatest actors of his generation, whether you know him as Superman or Geralt, The Witcher. There's a whole lot of love that Henry Cavill has, because he's not only just a phenomenal actor, he's a nerd just like all of us. So when David Cornsweet, who does look like Henry Cavill, when he got cast as the role, there was a lot of controversy around it. And how did he do? This guy smashed it out of the park. I'm not going to lie to you. He had one of my favorite Superman adaptations. And I think, and we'll get into it more, but I think it's because of age, because he's in his, I think, early 30s they establish. I know I'm in my early 20s, but he's not that much older than me. So I loved his adaptation so much as Superman, and I thought he did something that I don't think any other actor, at least for me, has done to where I thought it stood out, and that was have a Superman voice. We always talk about who has the best Batman voice. Was it Bale? Was it Keaton back in the day? Was it Affleck recently? Is it Jensen Ackles in the animated stuff? Who has the best Batman voice? And that's such a debate in all of comics and comic media and superhero media. But no one ever talks about who has the best Superman voice. And I think David Cornsweet by far has the best Superman voice I think I've ever heard. The way he's able to, I guess, broaden up the shoulders, which is probably not Christopher Reeve, and just be like, hello, Lois, versus Lois, like as Clark Kent. And I'm like, wow, I've never thought to distinguish the two. And I thought he killed it as both Clark Kent and Superman. Now, when you take on the role of both Clark and Superman in any film, any adaptation, video game, animation, there's so much pressure on you, because Bruce Wayne and Batman are very different, to where, in fact, a lot of Bruce Wayne's ideologies on face value go against what Batman stands for. You know, we see in Christian Bale's take of Batman, he has the whole sit down with Harvey Dent, and he essentially is crapping on Batman. But we know he's the guy behind the mask. With David Cornsweet, his adaptation of Superman and Clark Kent, it felt so real, because you saw the line of Clark Kent wanting to not only be Superman, but have Superman's values as Clark Kent. Because at the end of the day, Superman and Clark Kent, it's supposed to be like man and Superman. But they both are one and the same, and they're both going to have the same mind and ideologies. Maybe Bruce Wayne could say that Batman is some cheap vigilante that's ruining Gotham, and maybe Barry Allen could say that the Streak is ruining all the crime for the cops to go solve. But Clark Kent, he'll never say that about Superman. He'll never say that Superman is like a nuisance or that he doesn't do anything good. And I think when you really deep that, it makes you have a better appreciation for the character of Clark Kent. Clark Kent is at heart like a wimp. He's clumsy, but he's a good person. At the end of the day, Clark Kent first is a good person. And I think a lot of people like to say the same thing about Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And I think Clark Kent, especially at the younger age, does fit that role. And now I'm going to move on to Rachel Brosnahan, I think that's how you say her name, as Lois Lane. She was pretty solid. I'm not saying she was crazy. There is a scene with hers and hers and David Cornsweet, I should say, that we're going to come back to, but I don't want to waste too much time just drooling over Superman here. Nothing really to complain about. I'm not a huge Lois Lane fan in any comic, really and truly. I'm more of a Lana Lang kind of guy. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that I shouldn't want to have a Lana Lang. I should want to have a Lois Lane. And I feel like as I'm getting older, I'm having more of an appreciation for the character of Lois. But in this adaptation, they're not married. They don't have children yet. They're not even I'm not gonna say they're not romantic, because yeah, they have a lot of like kissing scenes in the film, but it felt very like the 90s animated show. And in that show, on face value, they don't present themselves as tight. They present themselves, obviously, as like there's nothing going on here, so nobody susses them out. This is a really cool scene, though, because this is from the interview that they do, and we'll dive into that a little bit later, but they do this interview at Lois's pad, and it was, oh man, such an impactful scene. I think that really stood out to me the most. In comparison to other Lois lanes, now, I had to really think about it. I think my favorite Lois Lane is probably the animated one from the animated series. I really like Erica Durance from Smallville, and she's Canadian, if I'm not mistaken. However, like I said, I'm more of a Lana Lang kind of guy. So I'm currently rewatching Smallville, and I think maybe I'm gonna like Lois a little bit better when she like comes into the show. But yeah, Rachel Brosnahan, she was pretty solid. I'm giving her like a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, and she really enjoyed playing Lois Lane as well. And I think at the end of the day, that's what matters to me the most. Be invested in the character that you play, even though you're not necessarily the star of the show. Embrace that role as like the strong woman, and she did, and I thought she was pretty good. All right, now we're going on to the one and only Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. One of the biggest haters, I think, since Topher Grace's Eddie Brock. This guy, oh my God. So Lex Luthor for me is such an interesting character because obviously Michael Rosenbaum, he plays him in Smallville, and you're going to hear that a lot, the Smallville references today. And it's a hard character for me to like because I think Michael Rosenbaum is like a 10 out of 10. I think objectively any Lex Luthor, whether it's Jesse Eisenberg, Kevin Spacey, I just think they're worse. Like, that's just me. And like, yeah, literally and figuratively there, Eldon. But I do think that they're just not as good. And I believe that Nicholas Hoult is the definitive number 2. And I think that, like, I think to me with Superman, because of my love for Smallville, if you're the definitive number 2 to Smallville, then you're most likely just the best. Because nothing for me is going to dethrone Smallville, I think, ever. So with that being said, you might actually think Nicholas Hoult is the greatest Lex Luthor ever. And I'm totally fine with that. What I liked about him too is that he was self-aware. I think Clark called him jealous, and he goes, yeah, I am jealous. I'm admitting that. Like, I am jealous that you're the alien with all the powers, and like, da-da-da. And I'm like, wow, man, that's pretty cool. He plays a younger Lex Luthor, and in this, they do have Luthor Corp. And it was so funny because I saw an interview with James Gunn, and the interviewer goes, yeah, like, in all the comics and in most adaptations, it's always Lex Corp. Why is it Luthor Corp in this? And James Gunn had to say, well, actually, in Smallville, it's Luthor Corp. And I'm like, dude, exactly. Do your research, man. Come on. So, really like Nicholas Hoult. I thought he was like I'd say he was probably my favorite parts of the film were Nicholas Hoult. But I will say, though, a lot of stuff that I liked about, we got some visitors, a lot of stuff that I liked about Nicholas Holt's character is that he reminded me, of a young Lex Luthor from Smallville. And I think for me, that's good. Like, if I could relate it to something that I really love, and then in turn, it makes it even better, I don't think there's any problem with that. So really enjoyed that. And we're going to get more into him a little bit later. The next character that we have the one and only Black Noir. Ultraman. So, Ultraman here, this was the biggest controversy. I'm going to go out and say it right now. I hate this design. I'm going to die on the hill. I hate it. I think let me backtrack. I hate the design for Ultraman. If this was Black Noir's costume in season 4 of The Boys, that's sick to me. Like, that's amazing. Now, without going into it too much, Ultraman for me is always alternate universe Superman from the Justice Syndicate. I'm pretty sure they're called, or the Crime Syndicate. So when you have Ultraman in this and he looks like that, it's like, dude, I don't want to throw away the Ultraman character right away. And we're going to get more into him later on as well. He was silent, and just like Black Noir. Like, he literally was like a 1-to-1 to Black Noir. Very strong because obviously, if you know Ultraman, he has Kryptonian DNA. So he has pretty much all the same powers as Superman. And I thought he was a cool weapon that Lex Luthor was using. Moving on now to more of the supporting cast, we have Skylar Gisondo as Jimmy Olsen. Now, surprisingly likable. Now, Skylar, I'm sure he's a stand-up guy. He's probably a great lad. I hate him in all of his movies that he's in. I'm sure he's a stand-up guy. He was recently, I replayed The Quarry, which is probably something I'll dive into on a future episode. And he plays Max in The Quarry, and Max is supposed to be the character you don't like. So I don't really like seeing him in stuff, but that's not like anything against him personally. That's just the characters that he plays. I really like Jimmy Olsen in this. Jimmy Olsen, he's a chick magnet in this. Surprisingly, that is true. This guy's walking down the road, and like all these girls are looking at him, saying they want him to go home with her. And I'm like, is this Jimmy Olsen or Justin? I mean, sorry. Is this Jimmy Olsen or is this like maybe Barry Allen or maybe Bruce Wayne? Eldon liked that one behind the scenes, but yeah. So I thought he was pretty cool. He had a nice role with his on and off girlfriend Eve, and they were able to get inside of Luthor Corp and essentially like overthrow it. For lack of better words, we're gonna get to that later. Now we got the Justice Gang. Now this was another really controversial take for me because we have, let me just adjust my glasses. We have Hal Jordan, Hawkman, and we actually have Guy Gardner, Hawk Girl, so not Hawk Woman. So remember, that is important, by the way. This is Hawk Girl. And then we have Mr. Terrific. So they were played by Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, Isabella Merced as Hawk Girl, and then Eddie Gathecki as Mr. Terrific. I really liked the Justice Gang. Now, I was trying to say to my friends that like who I saw this with 3 of my boys, and like not all of them are the most knowledgeable about like the nichier parts of DC, which is totally fine. And I was trying to say, I'm like, dude, the Justice Gang sounds stupid. Yes, I get it, but it's because like you need to go Justice League, Justice Society, Justice Society of America. There's like another one, and then the Justice Gang. So you can't really expect anything more. Like the whole justice teams are like borderline experiments, right? You start with the gang, eventually get the society, you might have the old age Justice League, the new age Justice League, right? Like there's a whole lot of justice. So with that being said, they played a good role. They're friends of Superman as well, so they know his secret identity and all that stuff. And I thought Nathan Fillion specifically did surprise me. My dad, he's a big fan of Guy Gardner, funny enough, so he said he's excited to watch it and see Nathan Fillion's take on Guy Gardner. I was never the biggest Guy Gardner fan because he was always so mean to Batman and Batman Brave and the Bold. But Nathan Fillion, I really like him in real life. Isabella Merced as Hawk Girl, thought it was good. I went into this thinking it was Hawk Woman, and it's not. So because it's not Hawk Woman, I don't really have a lot of complaints. It would be unfair to compare Hawk Girl to Hawk Woman because they're 2 different characters. And Mr. Terrific, to me, was like the unsung hero. He was like the running back on the Super Bowl winning team. Like he was really good. I thought his moments were cool. Eddie Gathecki killed that. And he reminded me like a lot about he reminded me a lot of Injustice, Mr. Terrific. So he was really good with the tech. He was smart. He was on it. So yeah, really solid there. And now I do want to spin back though to Clark and Lois, because I do want to talk about some chemistry between the set of characters. Now, Clark and Lois and Superman and Lois are very different. Now, Clark and Lois are boyfriend and girlfriend. They're seeing each other, but the relationship is a little rocky. And Lois Lane doesn't agree with Superman's political ideologies. So this kind of comes, this is where like, and we're going to dive into a bit more, but this is where the more real life relatability comes in. Long story short, there are 2 fictional countries in the DC universe. I should have wrote them down. And long story short, one of them are invading another. And Superman steps in and is like, well, you guys are trying to invade a country by killing people in cold blood with like billions of dollars worth of weapons. And Lois Lane's like, well, dude, they're a ally of the United States and you stepped in. And like he just kept saying, Lois, they were going to die. People were going to die. And I'm like, that's not Superman talking. That's Clark Kent talking. And I'm going to get into that scene a little bit more and just that whole ideology. But that scene was so powerful because she's interviewing Superman. But as fast as she's talking to Superman about ideologies and decisions, Clark Kent comes out not to defend Superman, but to defend himself. Because remember, guys, he's Clark Kent first. He's Kal-El. He's Clark. He's Superman way later on in his life. And it's like, I just thought that scene was so powerful because if Superman was on Earth today, if like hypothetically, if I tried invading my neighbor's house and making it as my own, Superman's going to stop me. Like that's who he is. And I really enjoyed seeing like Superman's emotions come out here because I like Henry Cavill, but I feel like Henry Cavill only made a decision like that with emotions when he actually killed General Zod at the end of Man of Steel. That's like a warranted death in my opinion. I didn't really look at that death and say, oh my God, he had to kill somebody. Dude, General Zod was trying to take over the Earth. This made it so much more down to earth, relatable, and it made it appropriate for the current world that we live in. Moving on now, well, not moving on, but going back to the Justice Gang, I did want to talk about their chemistry as well. I thought it was so funny. Like, Guy Gardner was like taking up the leadership role, trying to rename the name as, or no, he likes Justice Gang and everyone else says it's stupid. He's really trying to make this like, you know, a big serious team. And I mentioned it before, he ends up leading the charge to go help in that war, if you will. And I thought it was cool. You know, Guy Gardner, he established himself as the Green Lantern, and Hawk Girl and Mr. Terrific, they kind of fall in line and they help him out. Another character too that I don't want to touch upon too much, and I didn't even get a photo, but was Metamorpho. He was really cool in the film, and he kind of joins the Justice Gang unofficially. So yeah, in terms of performances and casting, I thought the casting and performances were really good. I don't think there's anyone that I would have changed. I don't look at that cast that we just talked about and thought, damn, they're not blank. I thought they all played the characters really well. Some better than others, but none to the point where I thought, ooh, you shouldn't have got that role. So I thought that was really good, and it didn't make me think, wow, I wish I was watching a different Superman adaptation. So going to the story, themes, and direction now. So I want to start off by addressing James Gunn. Now, James Gunn's tone on a film is really like James Gunn. He has a signature touch on it, and it's not for everyone. For me, it's not for me either, if I'm going to be honest. Now, out of all the films that he's done superhero-wise, Guardians of the Galaxy is one of my favorite movies of all time. But then I'm not a huge fan of 2. I'm just not. I guess that's might be a hot take. I think 3 is really overhyped. It's a good movie. It's like a solid 7.5, 8 out of 10. I don't think it's the greatest thing of all time, the way people say it is. And The Suicide Squad, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. I don't really like it. And I say this because I'm a fan of Suicide Squad and that story and that film and those characters. So I think James Gunn calling a team of guys and girls that aren't the Suicide Squad, The Suicide Squad, is the most James Gunn thing ever. And the movie was really goofy to me. It's a fun watch. It's enjoyable, but it's very James Gunn. And that's okay if you don't like James Gunn's movies. I'm a big Quentin Tarantino fan, and I love Christopher Nolan. Those movies, they're not for everybody. You know, Nolan's films they like to be dragged out. Tarantino likes to tell stories in like back to front. They're not for everybody, and that's fine. So I think for me with James Gunn, that's why I was a little hesitant. I respect him. I like him as a filmmaker. I respect what he does for both Marvel and DC, and he interacts with fans. At the end of the day, he's for the most part a good guy from what I know. So yeah, no diss to James Gunn, but to me, he doesn't make films that are made for what I like. So with that being said, I thought the tone was good, and I thought it did fit the Superman vibe, because at the end of the day, these are comic book characters that are coming to life. As much as we want them to be like down to earth, relatable, some of the stuff needs to be a little bit over the top because these are fictional characters and they're comic booky, and this was a very Superman-y film. So I'm gonna give him his flowers there. And now I do want to talk how the story tackles legacy, identity, and morality. Now Clark goes through a lot in this film, because halfway through, and I felt like a real G when I picked up on this, we see Jor-El and Alora. We had the Kryptonian talk behind the scenes. I'll deny the names are just, I can't. So Jor-El and Alora send Clark in the ship with the message. First half of the message is pretty pedestrian. Go on, Clark, you'll be strong, da 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 da. And he always said, I never found the second part of the message. Now, in a pretty rushed scene, in my opinion, Lex Luthor infiltrates the Fortress of Solitude, makes quick work with Ultraman, and they hack Clark's computer that had the message. Long story short, they fix it, translate it, and they pretty much say, you're going to go to Earth, you're going to rule over them with fear, with power. These are like lesser specimen, and it's true. Now, a lot of people online didn't like that, but dude, watch a Smallville episode. Watch season 2 and 3 of Smallville, and you know that that's like a story. So I loved that. I loved that he was able to be in a position of questioning his identity of who am I, what am I here to do, and it just made it so relatable. It made it so good. One thing about I almost said Star Wars, Smallville, that I love as a 2000s kid, I'm born in 2002, is that it's such a 2000s-y kind of show, and it brings you back down to earth when you watch it. And when you see Clark Kent in that, he struggles with his powers, and I've said it tons of times, it's like a teenager trying to adapt to puberty. When you see now David Cornsweet's adaptation, and he struggles with who am I, what's my identity, what am I going to do, that seems like a man in their 20s. Like, you know, you just finished college, university, what are you going to do, what's going on next, am I stable here, am I stable there? And I think it brought up a lot of good identity and, like, I guess, self-doubt that a lot of people have gone through. And I really like that touch to it, because now that I'm not in high school, maybe I don't need to necessarily watch Smallville and say, oh my God, I remember when that was me in grade, 9? But now when you watch something like Superman, and you're in and around my age, and you're relatively fresh out of school, and you're in your own field, and you don't really know what's next, you could then watch Superman and understand that, like, that is something that a lot of people go through. So I really thought that story aspect of it, of Superman's internal struggle, was really good. And that's kind of going to segue to the next part, which is the conflict. Now, the conflict that Superman had to deal with in this film was just, like, for lack of better words, just hate. Like, he even talks about it. He's like, everyone online is doing hashtags like super mid, super blanks, I can't cuss. And it's like, what's the point? Why doesn't everybody like me? I'm here and I protect people. And I think that was a really cool concept, because a lot of people could relate to that. You know, maybe I'm just going to quote Gordon Ramsay here. Like, it's the term busy idiot. Like, maybe you as a person do a lot of good work, but you put it to the wrong things. You know, maybe instead of, like, you know, focusing on your job, you're going out and you're making great connections at, like, I don't know, like social events, but that's not really getting you a lot depending on where you are. That's just an example, by the way. That's like just the first thing I came up with. And I think Superman really struggles with that. And he struggles with, like, the idea of him not being human, but he himself is human. Like, he's like, dude, I've always felt human when I went to school, when I, like, played sports, when I went to high school, when I was saving that girl, when I was saving that child, when I was there for that family. Like, I felt like I was human too. And I think that was very inspiring to me, because obviously a lot of people in life, they like, they're faced with a lot of challenges, whether it's like sexism, racism, ageism. There's always a lot of people that will feel like they are dehumanized, for lack of better words, because of things like their skin color, maybe their beliefs, their religious beliefs, political views. And I just think that this movie kind of tackles all that into one, to where, like, maybe if I related to it because of a, you know, maybe situation where I faced racism, maybe someone else saw that exact same scene and related to it because they faced sexism. And maybe someone else saw it and they felt like, oh my God, this just reminds me of when I was put down because I'm a little older, and that's ageism, right? I think that was really good. And I think the conflict that Superman had in here felt so relatable to everyone. And I think at the end of the day, that's James Gunn's, like, biggest brownie points for me. Like, he did something that a lot of Superman adaptations have never been able to do. Because, like I said, if, like, I watched Superman or Smallville today, sure, again, I could relate to it, but, like, I'm not the demographic. If Ellen and I turn on an episode, it's like, dude, this guy's like 15. We're in our 20s. Like, I don't care to watch his struggles in class anymore, right? But like I mentioned, his one struggle, or like his struggles, apply to so many different categories of life, and I just thought that was really touching. I'm going to move on now to pacing and storytelling. Now, this film, it scratched a lot of heads when James Gunn said it was only going to be about 2 hours and 10 minutes there. And before credits, it was actually like sub 2 hours. It was like an hour and 50 minutes. I'm still on the fence about that, because I didn't love the pacing. I just thought the movie deserved a little bit more time, because I feel like some scenes were rushed, such as Lex Luthor in the Fortress of Solitude. I thought maybe we could have saw more scenes from Jor-El as well, if we're just going to be technical. And I think I wanted to see a bit more Ultraman background. And I think that's where I'm going to dive in right now. I do want to bring up Ultraman. Again, if we can. This was one of, I know we got to go back. I'm so sorry, Aldine. There's one thing about Ultraman that I want to get a photo of, but then I couldn't because the film's relatively new. So we're going to leave this up for a little bit. Now, one of my favorite moments was the Ultraman reveal. So if you're somebody like me, you know who Ultraman is. You know he's a Superman variant, whether he's Clark Kent on Earth 3, or in this case, a Superman clone. And what was so cool was to see Superman, David Cornsweet, play both characters. And David Cornsweet as Ultraman had like longer hair. It was so cool. They were fighting back and forward. And what was so cool is that when he said, "Lex, you cloned me," Lex Luthor goes, "Yeah, man, you know I did. But this guy is stupid and he can't fight, but I can." And Ultraman is like wired up to a team that is like doing codes, and like each code is designed to like fight. So the meme is just 1A, 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 and 1A is to like punch. And it's like, yo, what class did Deku go to? 1A, 1A, 1A. And I thought it was so good. I thought it was really enjoyable to see a team like that assemble and just like not like destroy Superman, but just like beat him down. And that's something that a lot of people didn't like. It reminded me of Stryker and Deadpool, or what, X-23, whatever they called it back in the day, against Wolverine. And I thought that was really cool to see it again here. That was one of my favorite moments of the movie, was again just that whole 1A, 1A, 1A. And then in probably my favorite scene, I think, honestly, like, I was really thinking about this, but I think it might actually be my favorite Clark and Lex scene maybe ever. And like, that's crazy to say if you like know me and you know my Smallville report. But after Clark defeats Ultraman and goes and confronts Lex Luthor, Lex kind of says something like, "You're an alien," and then Clark just goes, "And that's it, Lex, that's what it is. You've always labeled me as an alien, but I've always felt human. I've never felt like I wasn't here, never felt like I didn't belong here." And it was so good. It just hit. And like, he just humanized himself. He's like, "I was human every day when I saved this and I did that. I never felt like an alien." And I was like, oh my God, James Gunn, that is the best scene you have ever written in your film career. That scene was Smallville season 11. That scene like was Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum. Like, it was crazy. And I just was like tearing up watching that. I'm like, that is one of the best scenes, I think, the film, like, I've ever seen in a Superman film. So overall, that's just my loose review. We've been going for about half an hour here. So just like my thoughts, my overview. And I'd say I'd give the film about a 7.5 out of 10. I do believe that there will be more projects in the DCU that will be even better. This is just the start. And I'm really happy that James Gunn was able to give us this movie. And we're going to do a quick fire here quickly, because this actually has a lot of ramifications for the future of the DCU. It started off pretty strong, and we know we are going to be getting Supergirl. We're going to get a Booster Gold series. I know Amanda Waller is getting her own series. We're going to get Dynamic Duo, and there's a whole lot to talk about. But let's do quickly about the immediate future of the DCU. We know we get Peacemaker Season 2 next month, and I'm really excited for that because Peacemaker did make a cameo in this movie. It was weird, though. You couldn't see him. He was just like he was just sitting there in the armor. I don't really know how they do effects like this, because you see a floating helmet and a floating armor pointing a gun at nothing. I feel like the effects these days are crazy in movies, and that's going to be really good. I'm really excited to see, well, hopefully I could see John Cena in it, and I think it's going to be a pretty solid film, or series, I should say. And after that, we will be getting Supergirl. That is played by, I forget her last name, but I know her first name is Allie. And she was cool. She made a nice cameo at the end as Kara. I love Kara Zor-El, and I thought it was so cool that they're adapting her like brash rebel kind of style here. She like pulled up drunk and she's like, "Where's my dog?" And then she's like, "Thanks, B-word, for watching my dog." I was like, that is just, it was too funny, and I think it's going to be really good. Other cameos that we did see in the film included Jor-El, who I did mention, played by Bradley Cooper. And we also saw Maxwell Lord, who is funding the Justice Gang. Maxwell Lord is played by Sean Gunn. I thought that was pretty good. And future characters that I would like to see in the DCU, there's a lot. Obviously, the most notable one is Batman. If you know me, I would love to see just the rest of the Justice League one day. Reverse Flash is another villain I want to see. I'd love to see Vandal Savage as well, maybe Darkseid and Doomsday. And I feel like another character that we need to see, which we haven't got, I can't remember the last time we've even seen her in live action, but we need Zatanna. As the guy that played Lego Batman, we need Zatanna. So please give us Zatanna. James Gunn, if you're watching this, that's all I want is Zatanna, please. And we also will be having the Lantern show that I did touch upon. I'm 50-50 on that. I think it'll be good. I love Jon Stewart. I love Hal Jordan. So we'll see how that goes. And yeah, I think that overall is kind of how we're going to, I guess, see what happens next in the DCU. I don't want to make any bold claims. I don't want to put any shows under more pressure. I kind of want to let it just happen. When the Batman came out, I did the same, and I put it under a lot of pressure, and it just blew me out of the way. That was a great film, and I think I want to do that with DC as well. So I think that's going to be it for me today. I really appreciate all the work that Eldon's done behind the scenes today to do this episode. And with that being said, for Eldon and episodes, you got to check out his screen chat, Jurassic Park Rebirth. He had a great review. It's a must watch because I thought the film was going to be a lot better. So make sure you tune into that. If you're tuning into this right now, give Eldon's episode of Screen Chat a watch. And let me know, guys, what you thought about today's episode, because I was really nervous to do this one because I was like, is the film going to be good? Am I going to like it? And I thought it was pretty solid. Not the greatest thing of all time, but by no means was this a flop. And I'm really excited that it was a good film in the end. what's next for the DCU? Well, hopefully it's just an upward trend, and I hope I could talk to you guys again about more DC projects in such a good light, because at the end of the day, I'm a DC guy at heart. DC Comics were the first comics I ever read, and I want nothing more than this universe to succeed. So that's going to be it for us today. Don't forget to follow us on social media at DCSA Media Hub. And don't forget to check out my new Instagram, Justin on the Air, separated by some underscores in there. Thank you guys so much for supporting on that. And yeah, thank you guys again so much for watching Screen Chat. I've been Justin. Stay safe. Enjoy your FNF Fridays live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca.